Tiki. It wasn't created at all-inclusive boring resorts where tourists sip blender-whipped drinks until they get brain freeze. It actually has a history, and it's a rather interesting one. Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant was born somewhere in 1907. Jamaica, Texas, New Orleans. He was always a little fuzzy about his origins. But before our boy Ernest was even a teenager, he was hanging around with his grandfather in New Orleans, where old Granddad took young Ernest to the Caribbean on his yacht. See, Granddad had an import-export business. No real details on what Grandpappy was shipping on that boat of his, but it probably included rum when Prohibition started. Ernest had a great time. Caribbean culture, cuisine, seeing a part of the world that most adults could only dream of at that time. Fast forward to high school graduation. Ernie's parents gave him two choices of what to do with his college money. Start school, or take the money and run. You can guess which one he picked. Probably with Granddad in his ear. So Ernest went back to the Caribbean to pick up where he'd left off, drinking in the sights and sounds of one of the most beautiful parts of the world. But as all good things must come to an end, so did Ernie's good time. Eventually his money ran out. It was 1931, and Ernest was back in America. A pile of tropical and Polynesian mementos without a dime to his name. He took odd jobs and entranced co-workers with tales of his adventures. In 1933, he'd scraped a few dollars together to put down roots, and that would change cocktail culture for the next 4 decades. See, Ernest brought an old tailor shop in North Hollywood. He put in a bar with a hot plate, a few tables, and hung up all of his accumulated Caribbean tchotchke. Don's Beachcomber Cafe was born. A few steps from Hollywood Boulevard, patrons had never seen anything like it. An island rum shack from a world away. And what made the place was the drinks. Ernest expanded on what he'd picked up in the South Pacific, and in the process created an entirely new cocktail. The Tiki Drink. Moving beyond just lime sugar and a single rum, Ernest created legendary cocktails by mixing and layering multiple spices, rums, and sweeteners. It was the mid-30s, the Depression. International travel was far out of reach for the average American, and the drinks Ernest created took their drinkers to someplace far away. Exotic. Magical. By 1937, Ernest had outgrown his digs and had to move across the street, changing the name to Don the Beachcomber, and his own name to Don, since everyone assumed that's what it was anyway. In contrast to the nightclubs of the time, Don never had an orchestra, or music at all. People came to be entertained by the space, the drinks, and each other. And the drinks continued to wow everyone. Shielded from view behind a bar wall, Don's concoctions were artfully crafted. From a small window adjacent to the bar, the cocktails would emerge, their construction a mystery. Don closely guarded his recipes, and the patrons never even saw the drinks being prepared. One of them being the Zombie, a cocktail that occupies the Tiki Hall of Fame to this day, created by good old Don. It was now 1937. A man named Victor Bergeron pushed open the rattan and jade tiled doors of Don's little oasis for the first time and left a forever changed man. Vic would always give Don credit, even though sometimes they had to kick him out. Victor's legacy, inspired by Don, will always be remembered. It is now known as the famous Trader Vic's restaurant where crab rangoon was invented. Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant, Don Beach, whatever name you went by, sir, we salute you. The impact you had on cocktails cannot be stressed enough. Cocktail geeks the world over tip their hats and their glasses to the path you forged. Cheers. That being said, let's talk about some drinks, okay? Basically, all tiki drinks stem from the daiquiri. And the daiquiri doesn't involve a blender. A true daiquiri doesn't involve strawberries or bananas or berries or any of that stuff. A daiquiri is rum, lime, sugar. And then, as the tiki drinks evolved, the recipe changed. The ratio was the same, but things were added to it, and it was kind of added on to. If you take a daiquiri and put mint in it, you've got a mojito. If you swap out regular Caribbean rum with Brazilian rum, you have a caipirinha. So everything is kind of a variation of a variation. But from the beginning, as far as tiki is concerned, you have a daiquiri. That's one of the main cornerstones. So a daiquiri is rum, lime, sugar. We're going to do lime. We're going to do roughly about between 1/2 and 3/4 of an ounce. You want to have your ratio of lime to sugar kind of close, because what a daiquiri is a sour, and a sour is just a spirit and a component of sweet and sour. So a daiquiri is basically a rum sour, just like a margarita is a tequila sour, so on and so forth. So there's our lime. We're going to do about an equal part of sugar. This is just simple syrup, 1 to 1. And we're going to do about 1.5 ounces of rum. 1.5 ounces being a standard shot. And I've already got ice in here. Shaking does two things. It chills the drink because you're shaking it with ice, and the ice cubes are banging against each other, which are putting tiny little crystals into the drink, and it's actually watering it down, but that's what you want. You want a tiny amount of dilution along with it being properly chilled. And that's a daiquiri. Cheers.